Good afternoon and welcome to Lunchtime series where we add value to people's lives happening every day, Wednesday and Thursday on eBizRadio.com. You can catch the Lunchtime series on all your major podcast channels today. To help us grow the channel and add more value to people's lives, please follow, like, and share today's conversation, because today we have our marketing leadership segment joining us, as per usual, the marketing communications expert, co-host Craig Page-Lee. How are you doing, Craig?
Kevin, I'm well, thanks. Yeah, we are just whizzing by. Another week gone, but at least there was a weekend of fun in between, which helps.
Yes, I'm recovering from my weekend. I'm like, everyone gets online today. They keep saying, "Are you okay? Is there something the matter?" I'm like, "I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine." I just
That's
shouldn't.
fantastic.
I just shouldn't get carried away with myself as I do. Um, yeah, the Craig, from last week's roundup. Sorry, I'm just moving through our documentation here. From last week's roundup of the conversation, direct to consumer marketing from 2 weeks ago, and then the e-marketplaces last week. What can you share with our listeners as a reminder from last week's conversation?
Yeah, Kevin, thanks. So as you say, there was a sort of 2 consecutive weeks, one with the direct-to-consumer marketing 2 weeks prior to that, and then e-marketplaces last week, because there was a really nice thread on those. And we learned some really good points around the opportunities and challenges of these two digital business models. But most importantly, what was quite clear is the competitive advantage for direct-to-consumer brands is actually evolved to become the go-to business model for larger brick and mortar brands, as they too are needing to diversify to remain competitive, and obviously they're the ones that need to meet shareholder expectations. So the report that we looked at gives us a few clues on what to actually look out for when developing your e-marketing strategy. So in summary, Kevin, brands will need to adopt an agile strategy that includes technology to move and react quickly to the changes in consumer demand, as well as their supply chain, importantly, as well as their supply chain. The products that win market share, and this was a really interesting point, are not necessarily the most recognized or sought, or at least highest quality products, but most definitely those that are consistently and readily available. The third point there is to minimize the loss in the marketing share from an out-of-stock products position to overcoming rising costs. Brands will need to leverage their technology so they can continuously monitor their catalog and stock inventory and overcome those out-of-stock issues. The next point is brands will need to spend more on advertising and across platforms, a point that we pick up on so many times in our conversation, particularly in the case of resilience and the challenges that the market is facing. Don't cut advertising costs. They need to grow competition. This will help prompt e-marketers to enhance their digital experiences and provide increased information to better connect with the brands and the core audiences. Brands will need to incorporate more brand building options to connect with e-commerce. And as the study shows, Kevin, brands are already considering adding new advertisement options to their repertoire, with the likes of 25% of brands considering AR, VR in their experiences. And we know that there's an increase of voice-activated advertising, and this is really important, as approximately 25% of US adults actually now have a smart speaker. Those are the takeaways from last week. I can't hear you.
Sorry, no, you can't hear me. Sorry.
There we go.
I know. Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people with a smart speaker. I'm one of them, and albeit quite useless and doesn't do much. But it's you can ask the stupid thing, what's the time, and play the news, and that's about it. Or how old was Gandhi when he died? But other than that, it doesn't do anything. But Craig, what are we going to share with our listeners today?
Kevin, today we're going to, as I mentioned at the end of last week, we're going to shift back into a bit of leadership content. We haven't had a conversation around a leadership topic for a while. So I really wanted to pick up on that, but narrow it down to a really interesting topic, that of human-centered leadership. And I'm sure that this is a topic that you address on a regular basis in your leadership and development training, Kevin.
It is, yeah. It's the predominant feature of what we do is we, as part of the slogan to my business is we create people solutions. So and not the other way around, solutions for people, just based on the fact that we are quite aimed at how the human is at the center of any major change or any sort of aptitude and ability that your business is going to have. So, for us, it's a major thing, and it's a very big and large consideration for any kind of intervention that you take.
Yeah, awesome. So I obviously want to start by setting some context around what human-centered leadership actually is, Kevin. So as you'd expect, there are multiple approaches and definitions on the topic of human-centered leadership. But let's start by looking at a few definitions from the various studies and articles that I came across. So articles actually ranged from the 6 characteristics of leadership in human-centered organizations to human-centered leadership, 5 actions for the new paradigm, to how to actually be a human-centered leader, etc. But I came across a really interesting article on Human Capital Leadership Institute, where we learned that human-centered leaders prioritize their people and culture. Yet it is not about people-pleasing or just about feelings. It includes compassion, which is the ability to be sensitive to the challenges that people are facing, to respond with empathy, and then take action to support and develop them. And important words coming through there, particularly the empathy aspect as well. We also learned from the John Burson Academy that human-centered leadership is fairly simple. Leadership that puts people first, exactly as you mentioned. But what does this look like on a daily basis? So being human-centered shapes our communication style, it shapes our mindsets and our sense of trust. Again, another important word. It also changes how we approach problems and think about advancement, Kevin. And it calls on us to shift the priorities and make employee well-being a strategic imperative, particularly in the face of employee burnout and the stresses of hybrid work. Another really interesting article from Human Capital Leadership Institute, also written by Kartika Aninda Pitri. This was published on the 22nd of October 2020, and it was titled "Psychological Safety is Crucial to Human-Centered Leadership." And what was really great here is she reminds us that there's never been a more important time for leaders to truly focus on what keeps organizations alive, namely people. And it introduced us to the concepts of human-centered leadership, which are structured around 4 key skills. First is the ability to build trust and create psychological safe workplace. Second was the ability to recognize and align meaning and purpose between people and organization. Thirdly was the ability to grow and develop people and that coaching and mentoring mindset. And then finally, the 4th skill set, there was the ability to empathize and take action accordingly. And again, you can see the word empathy coming through there. So, these are the skills that any leader can develop, but they also serve as identifying elements of human-centered organizations. So in closing on the definitions, Kevin, it's important to remember that human-centered leaders actually create a culture of recognition where employees feel valued, where they are respected and recognized for their creativity and innovation.
Yeah, Craig, it's interesting. The phrase psychological safety is, for me, that stands out. It stands out because when you ask anyone, well, let me not make a generalization. Many people that you do ask, what does it mean to make someone psychologically safe? They don't know, right? People don't know what that looks like. The second thing is, you mentioned build trust and create to be able to create the psychological safety, and you kind of go, okay, cool. How do you actively build trust with someone, right? And these are the things that we work with all the time, because it's this stuff that people don't know how to do. It's the strange thing that you'll come across big, large organizations that are making millions, and you say to the COO, tell me how you build psychological safety with your team. And 50% of the time, they have no clue. So, I'm so glad that we're actually having a conversation about this and just pointing out some of the important factors about it, because, the simple notion of empathy, and being able to sit with someone and just recognize that they're human going through a human experience, and seeing them as human and not as an object or a vehicle or a process, that gets you to where you want to go, right? So, having a human-centric sort of point of reference is unbelievably important. Correct.
Love
So,
it.
with a broad understanding of the concept of human-centered leadership, what does a human-centered leader actually look like? I mean, I'm glad that we're going to discuss it, because
Yeah.
their behavior, I think, is such a profound necessity for them to follow through to where, to upholding
Absolutely.
this.
Absolutely, Kevin. And I came across this really fantastic article, which was titled The Human Centered Leader. It was published on workhuman.com, a platform I'd never come across previously, which is a performance management blog, and was published as recently as the 4th of August this year, by Lynn Levy. The article includes some really great introduction to the concept of human-centered leadership by drawing us back to some of the emotions that employees actually feel coming out of the COVID pandemic. And really important that really is at the front end of a lot of conversations still to this day in the workplace. And it goes on to state that the future feels very uncertain, in absolute reality. Yet
Yeah.
there are many reasons to be hopeful as an employee. Over the medium to long term, an organization's competitive advantage will be the employees and the ability to innovate. This will require a shift in mindset from treating employees as resources, the word you used earlier on, to treating them like humans.
Craig, I think, I mean, this is something I've noticed just in the last 2 years already, right? That, since COVID, because our value systems have shifted, and because people have started making different decisions based on where they're working, how much time they want to work, and whether, working for the company is actually adding value to my life, people's value systems have changed. So, where the key sort of the key a key point for any employee today is to be as innovative and self-leader, or the skill of self-leadership. To be able to have those two things is what's going to drive business to the future. We are, and that's why the coach the leader, as a concept and a product that we sell, is becoming so pushed to the foreground, based on the fact that we don't just need employees anymore. We need leaders who are innovative, who happen to have a leader leading them. We don't just need employees anymore.
That's fantastic. And that just, Kevin, it's such a perfect segue to the next piece that I want to chat about, because the point that really stood out for me in the article was a reference to Gallup, which is a global analytics and advice firm. Phenomenal, you know Gallup well. And
Yeah.
it's an organization that helps leaders and organizations actually solve their most pressing problems. And it quoted this: to survive, grow, and continuously innovate, leaders should commit to creating a culture where every person can bring their initiative, their imagination, and their passion to work. A new leadership model is required. It's a human-centered model that treats employees as valued individuals who are respected, empowered, and trusted. Really, really great points. And Gallup's got some fantastic content. So this is where, go for it.
Sorry, I mean, I just recently, one of my newest clients that I'm fortunate to work with at a global level, because their value is the health of their employees. It's actually a value for the actual core competency for the organization. Last week or the week before, in the last month, because they value health, the entire organization had an email, WhatsApp free week that they instilled in the entire global organization. So no one was going to send emails. You weren't going to send emails. You couldn't WhatsApp anybody. You just had to work and get stuff done. right? To that degree is what people are doing. If you want to be the forefront, the front runner of really a human-centric organization that's really going to be standing firm in the future, it's really applying those values. And to Simon Sinek's version of that, a value is a verb. It is a thing you do, right?
It's a doing, yes.
And the fact that, this is some of the information you've come up with as well, just cements that point that you really, really have to consider, if you're going to be in the next 10 years, and if you're going to be forerunners of the next 10 years, how are you embracing the leadership model, and how does yours look?
Yeah, and so let's jump into that then, because let's look at some of those points that actually define what human-centered leadership actually is. So the first point that the article tackles is that human-centered leaders embrace a growth mindset. So we know that technology is continuously evolving at a rapid pace, but what used to take decades now takes years, Kevin. And when we came out of COVID, we were looking at some of the tech developments. What was taking years to months actually has gone down to weeks and days and even hours. So employees executing a task today really must be able to be continuously upskilled to handle a different job tomorrow. So important. Taking that into account, it's important that human-centered leaders actually embrace this growth mindset by genuinely believing that everyone's skills can actually be developed through dedication and hard work. And the growth mindset there creates a culture of continuous learning and evolution, where it's safe to work outside of your comfort zone and learn new skills. And that's just such a wonderful point.
No, sorry. It's like, I just want to point out that the language it uses is genuinely believe that everyone's skills have developed. It's literally like when you're teaching your children or trusting your children to make good decisions out there. It's exactly the same thing. You genuinely have to believe that you have done a good enough job as a leader and set them up for success, so that when they go out there and they're doing it and they're taking action and making things happen, that it comes from a profound brain
purposeful and
process.
intentional.
Completely intentional, absolutely. And so it has to be genuinely believed. I love that.
Yeah. So the second point is about earning respect. So here, leaders, as they move up hierarchies in organizations, obviously the assumptions is they deserve increasing respect. But according to Simon Sinek here, leaders lead not to serve those above them; they lead those who serve them. So lead to serve those who serve them, an important point to note. So what we noted from the article here is a couple of points that describe ways to earn respect. And that is, firstly, value employees, add a positive attitude, or at least adopt a positive attitude, own up to mistakes, hugely important point, own up to mistakes, forgive others' mistakes, be personable, and encourage the questioning of norms.
I'm just going to laugh because I'm like, people hear a list of those things, right? Adopt a positive attitude, own up to your mistakes, forgive others' mistakes, be personable. Just those 4 points. Like 90% of people can't do that on a daily basis, right? They can't.
Absolutely.
So if you just consider, for leaders to be really moving into the future, there's so much self-work that you actually have to be doing, because for you to be able to get on with it and get on with it quickly, it really, you have to be agile enough to be able to, I made a mistake. Okay, cool, guys, I made this mistake. Let's go. What's the next best possible thing? Cool. And make sure that you're part of that team and be personable. It's so important.
So that's why the third point is so great, because again, a lovely segue into what you just said about self-work. Yeah. The third point is about taking off the mask, Kevin, which tells us that the human-centered leaders need to be authentic and genuine, and that they are guided by their values, and that they actually stay true to those principles and are able to connect emotionally to employees. So in other words, we learn that everyone is invited to let their masks down and connect, inspire, collaborate, and innovate. And just fantastic points. The fourth point is about understanding the limits knowledge, and this definitely goes along with embracing a growth mindset. As leaders move up the hierarchy, the intellectual capital tends to decline, and it's very much driven by the fact that they do not have time to focus on understanding the detail of what's needed in the market. So effective leaders, however, empower employees to challenge the norms and decisions, engaging employees to gain more of the right information to drive the strategy and vision. And what's really great here is that human-centered leaders acknowledge their blind spots and actively engage those who have the detail needed to make decisions. That's self-empowering.
Craig, I mean, we currently working on it's called a specialized leadership program with one of the business schools, and one of the considerations we have is presence. What is presence, and how do you know that you have presence? And part of that is asking the question is, what is your purpose? Do you know that nobody can answer that question?
Wow.
We have 25 leaders in this cohort that kind of go, I'm not really sure what my purpose is, right? So and at that level, you've got to be able to take off the mask, and because you hide behind the title of I'm a specialist in whatever, I do this thing, whatever that is. But when you literally go, it's like, well, what is your purpose then? And it should be, leaders of the future should be able to have like one sentence immediately answered, and this is my purpose.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
For me, it's adding value to people's lives.
Yeah.
Like if I can do that, then I'm winning at life, and everything I do ties back into that all the time, right? And understanding the limits of knowledge. Simon Sinek's as well, being able to serve your people is know that you don't always have to be the smartest person in the room. That know your own limits and hold those high who know what they know, and help them carve out the vision and lead them to where you're going, right?
Yeah.
But being able to put your ego aside for a second and kind of go, for that thing that we're sort of getting to and where we're going, how do we do that as a team, as collaboration, co-collaborators?
Absolutely.
So important.
Yeah. So Kevin, point 5 goes on about human-centered leadership is about removing obstacles, and it's about not micromanaging, rather removing those barriers to enable the teams to be effective, to perform at the optimum, to be more creative, and the primary role there is to make employees more successful, which I really, really like. The 6th point in the article is about asking for feedback, where human-centered leaders regularly ask for feedback from their teams, taking the feedback seriously and committing to evolve and change. Point 7 is about understanding the impact of bias. We had this wonderful conversation a few weeks ago on bias. Leaders must be aware of their own biases and the organization's challenge for creating that diverse and inclusive culture. And that really is a great conversation if listeners are interested in this topic to go back and listen to that particular one. Point 8 is about coaching versus managing, and I know you speak so well into this space where that command and control leadership model has to evolve to where leaders are actually the providers of support and guidance, and in doing so they're enabling their employees to make the right decisions through ongoing coaching.
Craig, I'm fortunate enough to work with the Neuroscience for Business as one of the assessors, and one of the key one of the first modules that you learn is about simplification, right? And I look at removing obstacles, right? As a leader of the future, from a neuroscience specific point, the more you can simplify your life, the process, where you're going, how you're getting there, and you can remove obstacles for people, the easier they're going to get there, right?
Yes.
And the same goes for you. Part of what they ask in the program is, what else could you literally simplify to that degree so that your health is taken care of, so that what it is, how you're showing up, how do you ideate, how do you create, how do you manage anything, how do you manage your time, right? It's so important, and it's just simply by simplification, right?
Yeah, love that.
One of the other things, I was looking at a client recently, and I gave him a little bit of homework, like really little. And I said to him, please show me your homework. Show me what you've done. And he's like, oh no, I didn't have time. So I said, quickly pull up your calendar. I just want to see how busy you are. And he literally had gaps of like open time scheduled, like nothing scheduled, like nothing. It's like, so what do you mean you don't have time, right? And it comes back to that really removing obstacles, because the fact that he doesn't even know what he's doing with his time, right?
Yeah.
How do you simplify your life so that you actually know that this time is dedicated to this thing specifically? And that way, by managing your time and managing your energy, you get to everything throughout the day, and you don't have lists and lists and lists of things to do, right? And that speaks to that coaching versus managing point, right? So you don't. I like the fact that it mentions to not micromanage, because people show up. Yeah, what's that old saying? When the student is ready, the teacher will show up, right? And vice versa. When the student is ready, the teacher shows up. But you can only show up for someone when you actually elicit that out of them. If you're constantly micromanaging people, they just expect to be, kind of useless. They kind of expect you to tell them what to do and how to think and where to go. And but if you start eliciting information enough from them, and you're a bit strategic on how you getting them to show up, you can get people to stand in their power and stand in a leadership frame of mind and kind of go, well, this is what I think. And because of that, it enables them to move forward. It's
fantastic. Three more points in terms of defining what human-centered leadership actually looks like. Point number 9 is about caring about more than profits. An incredibly important point when looking at the business, particularly in light of ESG reporting, UN Sustainable Development Goals, etc. It's definitely about those forward-thinking leaders, Kevin, that can embrace society as a whole, and very much around the Simon Sinek thinking as well. So caring for and investing in society and community in which they actually operate.
But Craig, so here's the thing. How, as much as it's a great point, right? What 90% of the leaders will say to you is, yes, but we have to make that bottom line. The ROI is really important. We have to crunch the numbers and hit the target by the 31st. I can't care all that much all the time because we're busy. We're crunching numbers. Things need to move. We need to grow. So I think, people, as much as this is an important point, that's where people get it really skewed. That's today's leader really needs to come from a position of again, going back to that empathy, right? And understanding circumstances. And the only way that you essentially, and people don't believe that, but essentially you get to the profit when you care about the people.
Absolutely. And caring about more than profit doesn't mean that you're turning the back on a profitable organization or just there for the people. If from the get-go you're building the purpose with the people to understand what the core objective of the business is and how you're going to achieve that and how everybody can contribute to taking the business on its journey and the diversity, inclusion, equity proposition. When you look at all the layers coming together and working with the principled leaders, human-centered leaders, profit should be a bygone conclusion, because the effectiveness of the business in the right strategy, in the right market, with the right marketing, with the right approach, etc., and the resoluteness of the business strategy is going to ensure that the business turns over what it needs to be turning over. And you as leader need to be leading as opposed to wagging the stick to try and draw stuff out of folk. Because if that's what you're doing, you haven't structured the business correctly.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm so glad that you say that, because, and that's where people get it skewed, because they literally go, I'm busy. You're telling me we haven't met our sales target for this week, and you're telling me I need to worry about why people are late. Like, I don't have time for that. That's the kind of thing people, and you're going,
then that's the wrong leader for that role. Absolutely.
Exactly. Then you're going to really backtrack and kind of go, okay, cool. Do you understand why you're here then?
Yep.
Right? You have to understand, is this the space that you need to be in? Because you would know why they are late if you were really part and parcel and caring and coming from a caring perspective.
That's
Like,
exactly it.
there would be so many little things that you would be, it's like having them at the tips of your fingers. Your team should be that close to you that you kind of know, no, I know exactly what the emotional state's in. I know exactly what, how to motivate that person. That person needs to feel like they're winning and they're on a winning team. So I'm constantly, encourage them to win. And all of these factors that you show up as a leader influences how that team inevitably will unfold. And if you don't,
that goes right down to, again, just ensuring that the psychological safety net is in place for staff, that there is trust in place, that they have the right resources, that they have the right tools to be able to operate effectively and deliver to the expectations that are set in their KPIs. And on the point of delivery, the point 10 is actually about leveraging technology, and human-centered leaders have this ability to understand the value that technology can actually bring to the organization, and understanding how technology can help them transform the culture into one that values, recognizes, inspires each individual in the organization, Kevin. And then the final point on this incredible article is human-centered leaders recognize great work. They are able to create a culture of recognition where employees feel valued, respected, recognized, as I mentioned earlier, for their creativity and innovation. And for organizations to be successful and thrive in this new world of work, Kevin, they must adopt this new leadership model that treats employees as value, respected humans who are critical in delivering competitive advantage.
Craig, one of the 6 human needs is recognition, right? We can't go without it. So, as humans, when we are putting the effort in, when we're working at something, at the end of the day, and my manager or my leader uses the word, so proud the fact that I did, I'm the leader of this team and I did so well, or even the fact that you say we did so well, and you don't recognize anyone that you're speaking about, this collective we. Who's the we you're talking about? As humans, we want to know that, Kevin, you on that project, you did so well. Craig, on that project, you did so well. There needs to be an actual recognition. Why? Because as humans, we need to know that as humans, I add value. And when I don't add value, I don't feel like I'm needed. Right? And it's simple tool that you can use as an effective leader is recognize the people for who they are and what they bring to the table.
Yeah, fantastic.
So, I mean, as we close the show today, what can the listeners take away from our conversation?
Yeah, Kevin. So three key points to take away from the conversation today, and I actually want to reference an article I came across on Forbes.com. Again, one of my great sources of inspiration. It was an article published on the 8th of May 2020, and written by Chuan Yeo, titled "Why Organizations Need Human-Centered Leaders," and the 3 tips to get started. So we note the following from one of the opening paragraphs of the article. Forget people-centeredness and embrace human-centeredness. Satisfying and addressing the human needs of their valued employees is key for organizations that still want to be around after the next decade. So a powerful and essentially necessary step for every leader to actually take to ensure that the sustainability and success of their respective businesses are in place.
Craig, I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a whole program out of this, and I'm going to do like a 2-3 month program for for leaders to really get on board with really understanding what the human needs are of their employees and how to recognize them and how to improve them and support them, because it's a fact. That's
Yep.
where
Yep.
the future lies.
Yeah, and that's why I really thought that the topic today is essential for us to discuss, and some great content that I've come across here. So the article provides 3 tips to help leaders move from being that people-centered to the human-centered space that we talk about. So tip number 1 is they must recognize employees as human beings with needs, and some of the questions to help them really just interrogate the understanding of that point is, what human needs do my employees have? And what am I doing daily to meet their needs of autonomy, sense of belonging, and mastery? And what we learned from the article is that line managers, again, this is something that we discussed when we looked at effective leadership teams, is really it's the line managers who can actually have the biggest impact on seeing the shift from human resources as those basic resources to actually great contributors of the future success of the organization, and will transform the way leaders and human, at least employees, engage with each other, Kevin. Tip 2 was examine all ideas for potential value, even when they sound alien, all contributions, even when the value seems intangible. And really important, there's nothing like a stupid answer, at least stupid question, anything like that. Is everybody's contribution has intrinsic value there. So, and some of the questions that leaders could ask themselves in understanding this point is, am I inviting, considering, and seeking to understand ideas and opinions that are beyond my current state of imagination and comprehension? And the second question is, am I sharing my point of view openly and respectfully when I do not understand my employees' perspective yet? And the point to consider there is that employees can often just demonstrate an incomplete understanding of the context of that particular point, which happens, and human-centered leaders must seize that opportunity to give constructive feedback and actually guide the team into the point of understanding and belief, Kevin. And then the last tip here is guard against complacency and be a champion for lifelong learning. And the key question here is, have I embraced agility as my leadership mindset by updating, renewing, and upgrading myself continuously? Important, myself continuously. So yeah, I want to close with another great quote from the article, Kevin, and it made a really impactful point on me. In the fast-moving economy, organizations have to strive harder to build an inclusive culture and promote innovation to continue thriving. It's a matter of survival. Employees are the greatest human assets, and if organizations start centering on meeting human needs and cultivating the soft skills irreplaceable by automation, it will protect the lifeline of organizations for a long time to come. And I really did appreciate that paragraph. And Kevin, those are the takeaway points for today's discussion.
Great. These 3 last points, and not to ramble on, but recognizing human needs, all opinions matter, and really all ideas are important, and just complacency, right? For me, it is the biggest. It is probably the biggest mistake that any leader can find himself in, is in a comfort zone. It's especially from learning and being able to grow from that perspective. So yeah, I mean, just as a final 3 notes, I think those 3 points make a substantial difference, and I mean, so substantial that I'm going to make reference to this document today. When I use it again, I'm going to say, Craig found this wonderful information. Craig, thank you for today. I just love that. I think it's a fantastic conversation, and I think it fits right into exactly what I do, and just considering what I'm currently doing and where I'm headed to, and in all of the stuff that I am doing, it's quite exciting, because it speaks to all of these points, and you know, from it sort of also it also cements it from a different perspective, you know, from an outsider's perspective, that what we're doing is right on par with where we're moving into the future with what people need and what companies and organizations
Yeah,
need and
yeah,
are craving for at this
absolutely.
point. So
Yeah.
thank you for that.
Pleasure. So, you know, what I find so fascinating about these various points from these great articles is that in yourself, if one forget the human-centered leadership role, if one just adopted many of these principles in your own being, you
Yeah.
become more human-centered as a human being.
Yeah. Yeah, and what's beautiful about that is then that means you're intentional, you're present, you also consciously aware of how you affect your environment and the people you're working with, everything about it. So yeah, it's not just applicable to organizations and people
Correct.
leading. It's human qualities that you could actually cultivate and actually live from here. So I love that.
Absolutely.
Craig, thank you
Brilliant.
so much, guys. If you want to catch us, we're on every Thursday at 12 on ebuzzradio.com, and you can check it out on the Lunchtime series on YouTube. Please support, like, share, and follow. Craig, thank you for today, and thanks for the fantastic conversation. I'll see you next week.
Look forward to next week, Kevin. Thank you very much.